On November 17, 1991, one of the world's most respected cave divers entered Indian Springs and never came out alive. Today we will be discussing the story of Parker Turner, a legendary cave diver, and the nightmare story that took place at Indian Springs. The caves are a terrifying place, one of great risk and danger. And tonight, a hidden force within the rock will decide fate. This is the story of Parker Turner. Please make sure to leave a like if you enjoy, and subscribe for more true cave exploration stories. His death was not the result of a simple mistake or equipment failure. The cause was something far more subtle, something invisible and insidious. It was a danger that had been hiding in plain sight, in the very air the divers exhaled. This is a story of how even the most experienced can fall victim to the unknown, and how a place of stunning beauty can become a tomb. To understand the tragedy at Indian Springs, you must first understand the man. Parker Turner was not an ordinary diver. He belonged to an elite class of underwater explorers, men and women who ventured into the last uncharted territories on Earth. He was a highly skilled technical cave diver, a master of a discipline that combines the precision of an astronaut with the courage of a mountaineer. Parker was more than just a diver. He was a cartographer of the underworld. He frequently collaborated with fellow experts on ambitious mapping and exploration projects, pushing the known boundaries of underwater caves. His approach to cave diving was defined by discipline, rigorous planning, and an almost obsessive focus on risk management. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a science. Every piece of equipment was checked, double-checked, and then checked again. Every potential failure point was identified, analyzed, and mitigated with a corresponding backup plan. This philosophy, born from hundreds of hours spent in the silent, unforgiving darkness, was the bedrock upon which his reputation was built. He understood that, in the labyrinthine passages beneath the earth, the diver's greatest enemy is not the cave itself, but human error. Complacency, overconfidence, and haste were luxuries that had no place in his world. He viewed each dive as a complex technical problem that required a carefully engineered solution. The solution wasn't just about getting in and out. It was about creating a wide margin of safety for every conceivable contingency. Gas management, for example, was not a matter of guesswork. It was governed by inviolable rules, like the rule of thirds. 1/3 of the gas supply for the journey in, 1/3 for the journey out, and a final third held in absolute reserve for emergencies. This principle, a cornerstone of safe cave diving, ensures that a diver always has enough breathing gas to get themselves and a distressed buddy back to the surface, even if a catastrophic failure occurs at the furthest point of penetration. In an environment where panic is a death sentence, Parker's calm and analytical mind was his primary survival tool. The human brain is not designed for the crushing pressure and absolute blackness of a flooded cave. The instinct to flee, to gasp for air, to struggle towards a surface that isn't there, can overwhelm even experienced divers. But a meticulously constructed dive plan acts as a powerful psychological anchor. By breaking the dive down into a series of manageable, predetermined steps, the mind remains focused on the immediate task, not the overwhelming scale of the danger. This mental discipline, the ability to suppress fear and adhere to the plan, is what separates survivors from statistics. He was known as a reliable and calm partner, someone you would want by your side when facing the inherent perils of the abyss. In technical diving, the buddy system transcends simple companionship. It is a pact of mutual survival. Each diver is responsible not only for their own safety, but for the life of their partner. This requires absolute trust, flawless communication through hand signals and light movements, and an intimate knowledge of each other's equipment and procedures. He and his partner for the day were a well-practiced team, their movements and checks a familiar, reassuring ritual. It was this very reputation for caution, this dedication to engineering solutions for every known risk, that made the events of November 17, 1991, so profoundly unsettling. When a diver who embodies the principles of safety and preparation fails to return, it sends a shockwave through the entire community. It forces everyone to confront a terrifying possibility. that there are dangers in the deep that no amount of planning can account for. The morning of November 17, 1991, broke over the Florida Panhandle with an air of quiet purpose. The air was cool, the sky clear, a perfect day for diving. At the entrance to Indian Springs, the atmosphere was one of focused professionalism. There was no bravado, only the quiet hum of preparation as the team assembled their complex life support systems. The objective was clear and ambitious: to conduct an advanced deep dive, pushing further into the explored sections of the colossal cave system. The plan was to follow the main guideline deep into the cave, to a depth of approximately 270 feet. From there, they would explore a specific side passage known as the Wakula Room, a vast chamber that promised new avenues for exploration. This wasn't a casual sightseeing trip. It was a mission with specific goals of survey and exploration, pushing the known boundaries of the system. This was not a journey for the faint of heart or the unprepared. It was a technical operation that required the precision of a surgeon and the resolve of an astronaut. The route would take them through constrictions, across vast, silent chambers, and into depths where the weight of the water above exerts a pressure of nearly 9 times that of the surface. At this depth, every movement is deliberate, every breath carefully controlled. To survive a journey into the deep zones of Indian Springs, a diver must carry their world with them. This means not just a single tank of air, but a sophisticated, redundant life support system. The core of this system is the twin set, 2 large cylinders mounted on the back, providing the primary breathing gas for the deepest part of the dive. But that is only the beginning. They were equipped with specialized gas mixes, using helium to combat the intoxicating effects of nitrogen at profound depths. Standard compressed air, which is 79% nitrogen, becomes a powerful narcotic under pressure. This nitrogen narcosis impairs judgment, slows reaction times, and can induce a dangerous sense of euphoria, a fatal combination in a cave. To counteract this, the nitrogen in their breathing gas was replaced with helium, creating a mixture known as trimix. Helium is an inert gas that does not have the same narcotic properties, allowing divers to maintain clear thought and motor control at depths that would be incapacitating on air. The dive was scheduled to last several hours, with the majority of that time spent on a slow, methodical ascent with multiple decompression stops. While helium solves the problem of narcosis, it, like nitrogen, dissolves into the body's tissues under pressure. Ascending too quickly would cause these dissolved gas molecules to come out of solution, forming bubbles inside the body, a painful and potentially lethal condition known as decompression sickness, or the bends. To prevent this, the ascent had to be painstakingly slow, with long pauses at specific depths. The plan called for the use of staged cylinders, extra tanks of decompression gases left at specific points along the guideline. These tanks contained different gas mixtures, typically with higher percentages of oxygen. Breathing these richer mixes during the shallow decompression stops helps to accelerate the off-gassing of inert helium and nitrogen from the body's tissues, significantly shortening the required decompression time. The divers would carry some of these cylinders with them and stage others along the guideline on the way in, retrieving them on their way out. Each cylinder was clearly labeled with its contents and maximum operating depth, a critical detail to prevent a diver from breathing a high oxygen mix at a depth where it would become toxic. Their only connection to the known world was a thin nylon line. This guideline is the single most important piece of safety equipment in a cave. It is the Ariadne's thread leading out of the labyrinth. In the complete absence of natural light, and with visibility that can be reduced to 0 in an instant by disturbed silt, this line is the only guaranteed path back to the surface. Losing the line is one of the most terrifying and deadly scenarios a cave diver can face, a situation that almost invariably ends in tragedy. The diver's hands would never be far from it, their movements practiced to ensure they never became separated from this vital link. The plan was robust. It was built on decades of collective experience and a deep, personal understanding of the risks involved. It accounted for equipment failure, gas emergencies, and medical issues. They had backup lights, backup masks, and redundant breathing systems. They had the training, the discipline, and the right mindset. As they exchanged a final calm nod at the water's edge, they believed they had an answer for every question the cave might ask of them. But the cave was about to pose a question no one had ever thought to consider. With a final meticulous check of their equipment, gauges monitored, regulators purged, lights confirmed, and a shared nod of silent understanding, Parker Turner and his dive partner slipped beneath the placid surface of Indian Springs. The transition was absolute. The warm Florida air gave way to the cool, 72-degree embrace of the aquifer. Sunlight, which had moments before dappled the surface, was now a rapidly shrinking emerald window, its light surrendering to the profound and ancient darkness of the cave system below. This was the point of commitment, the final threshold between the familiar world and the alien environment they had trained so rigorously to enter. Every breath was now a measured, deliberate act, a conscious consumption of the finite supply of gas they carried on their backs. The initial phase of the dive proceeded exactly as planned, a testament to their extensive preparation. They descended with practiced ease, their movements efficient and calm. Their powerful primary lights sliced through the inky blackness, revealing the limestone walls of the passage. They followed the permanent guideline, a thin nylon cord that serves as the sole lifeline back to the surface. This simple line is the most critical piece of safety equipment in a cave, the Ariadne's thread in a subterranean labyrinth where disorientation can be fatal. Their progress was steady, a rhythmic kick and glide, conserving both energy and gas as they penetrated deeper into the earth. They passed familiar landmarks and junctions, each one ticking off a mental checkbox in their meticulously rehearsed dive plan. After a descent that felt both timeless and precisely measured, they arrived at their destination. At a depth of 265 feet, they hovered weightlessly in a chamber of immense scale, an area of the cave few humans had ever witnessed. Here, the pressure is immense, nearly 9 times that of the surface. The water, once clear, now held a fine suspension of silt, a ghostly haze that softened the edges of their light beams. The trimix gas they breathed, a carefully calculated blend of oxygen, helium, and nitrogen, kept their minds clear, warding off the debilitating effects of nitrogen narcosis that would be overwhelming at this depth on standard air. This was the pinnacle of their exploration, a moment of profound isolation and discovery in a place of humbling, geological grandeur. Adhering to the rigid discipline of technical diving, they reached the planned turning point of their dive. This moment is not determined by curiosity or ambition, but by the cold, hard logic of gas management. The rule of thirds dictates that 1/3 of the gas supply is for the journey in, 1/3 is for the journey out, and the final third is held in reserve for emergencies. Parker's partner signaled, and Parker confirmed. They had reached their limit. It was the moment when they would end their inward journey and begin the long, slow trip home. As they began their exit, turning to retrace their path along the guideline, their mood would have been one of focused satisfaction. The dive had gone perfectly so far. They had reached their objective, their equipment was functioning flawlessly, and their gas consumption was right on schedule. The most challenging part of the penetration was complete. Now began the equally critical and often more dangerous phase of the dive. The ascent, a multi-hour process of slow-stage decompression, stops that would allow the inert gases absorbed by their bodies under pressure to safely dissipate. It was during this exit phase, just minutes after turning back, that the unthinkable happened. Without any warning, no tremor, no audible groan from the rock, a massive section of the limestone ceiling directly between the two divers gave way. A violent, explosive concussion of water and energy tore through the passage. The stable, silent world of the cave was instantaneously transformed into a maelstrom of churning silt, rock, and debris. The collapse was not a gentle crumbling, but a catastrophic failure of the cave's structure, releasing immense stored energy in a fraction of a second. Parker's partner had been swimming just ahead, leading the exit. The powerful shockwave from the implosion threw him forward. He fought to control his buoyancy and orientation, turning back to find his partner. But the passage behind him was gone. Where his friend had been moments before, there was now only a roiling, opaque cloud of silt so thick that even the most powerful dive light could not penetrate it. The guideline, their connection to each other and to the surface, was severed, buried somewhere within the chaos. As the silt began to settle, the horrifying reality became clear. Where there had once been an open tunnel, there was now only a solid wall of freshly fallen rock and debris, a tombstone of limestone sealing the passage completely. The collapse had been total. Parker was trapped on the other side, cut off from the only way out. For his partner, hovering in the dark water, the sight was incomprehensible. The mental map of the cave, so carefully memorized, was now useless. The path home had vanished. His partner, faced with a horrific choice, knew there was nothing he could do. Attempting to dig through the tons of rock was impossible and would only be a suicidal act. His own survival now depended on immediate action. With a dwindling gas supply, a long decompression obligation, and the psychological trauma of what he had just witnessed, he had to make the loneliest journey of his life, to exit for help, knowing it was already too late. The collapse had not just trapped Parker, it had made any potential rescue impossible. Within hours, some of the world's most elite cave rescue divers were on site, descending into the spring in a desperate bid to reach Turner. But their efforts only confirmed the grim reality. When they reached the collapse zone, their powerful lights illuminated a scene of absolute finality. The passage was completely and irrevocably blocked by a mountain of rock and silt. There was no gap, no side passage, no way through. Parker Turner was beyond reach, entombed within the silent heart of the mountain. In the aftermath of the tragedy, a haunting question echoed through the stunned cave diving community. How could this have happened? In a discipline defined by meticulous planning, redundancy, and a deep respect for known hazards, a cave simply falling from the ceiling seemed like an impossible, almost supernatural event. It defied the established risk calculus that every diver lived by. There was no equipment malfunction, no procedural error, no sign of human mistake. The environment itself had failed. The search for answers became an urgent obsession, a mission to reclaim a sense of order from the chaos. Investigators, geologists, and the most experienced divers in the world began to scrutinize every detail of the incident, looking for a rational explanation for what seemed utterly irrational. The investigation began not with complex geology or advanced physics, but with a simple, observable fact of every dive. Every time a diver exhales, a stream of bubbles is released. In the open ocean, these bubbles rise to the surface and vanish, insignificant and forgotten. But in the enclosed, overhead environment of a cave, they behave very differently. Investigators, having ruled out all other conventional causes, were forced to consider the unconventional. They turned their attention to the only foreign element that divers consistently introduce into the cave system: their own breath. Could something as seemingly harmless as a bubble be a clue to a catastrophe? Inside a cave, the journey of an exhaled bubble is cut short. They travel upwards until they hit the solid limestone ceiling. This ceiling, however, is not a perfectly smooth surface. It is a complex, irregular landscape of pockets, crevices, and solution tubes carved by water over millennia. The bubbles, naturally seeking the highest point, migrate into these imperfections and become trapped. In the still, current-free water of the cave, they have nowhere else to go. They collect, coalesce, and form larger and larger pockets of air, perched against the rock, hidden from view. Investigators then considered the specific location of the collapse. It wasn't in a random, seldom visited passage. It was in a section of the cave that lay directly beneath a common decompression stop zone. This was a critical clue. Decompression stops are not optional. They are a mandatory safety procedure on deep dives, allowing the body to safely off-gas absorbed nitrogen. Divers must remain stationary at specific depths for set periods. For convenience and safety, these stops are almost always performed in the same locations: wide, stable areas of the cave near the exit. This meant that for years, dozens, if not hundreds of divers, had been pausing and breathing in the exact same spot. Over the course of hundreds of dives, this meant that one specific area of the ceiling was being subjected to a constant, concentrated barrage of exhaled air. Each diver, spending minutes or even hours decompressing, would contribute their bubbles to the same collection points in the ceiling above. What was a negligible amount from a single dive became a significant volume when multiplied over years of intense diving activity. The air wasn't just passing through, it was accumulating, creating a substantial, permanent air pocket within the rock structure, growing larger with every team that passed through. To understand why this matters, one must understand the natural state of a flooded cave. It exists in a delicate state of equilibrium. The immense weight of the overlying rock is partially supported by the water that fills the cave. This water isn't just in the main chamber, it permeates the entire rock mass, filling every tiny crack and fissure. This water provides hydrostatic support. Because water is virtually incompressible, it acts like a liquid scaffold, pushing back against the force of gravity and helping to hold the ceiling up. When a bubble of exhaled air rises and enters one of these cracks, it displaces the water. The equilibrium is disturbed. Where there was once heavy, supportive, incompressible water, there is now light, compressible air. This fundamentally alters the physics of the structure. The liquid scaffold is gone, replaced by a pocket of gas that offers no structural support. The weight of the rock that was once borne by the water is now hanging, unsupported. But the trapped air does more than simply remove support. It introduces a new, active force into the equation. The trapped air is buoyant. It wants to rise. This creates a constant, upward pressure on the rock above it, effectively trying to lift a piece of the ceiling away from the main rock mass. The rock is now being subjected to two opposing forces, the downward pull of gravity on its own unsupported weight and the upward prying force of the buoyant air pocket. A subtle yet relentless tug-of-war was taking place deep within the stone. The final piece of the puzzle was chemical. The exhaled air, rich in carbon dioxide, creates a highly corrosive environment when trapped against limestone. The interface between the trapped air, the water, and the rock becomes a zone of accelerated chemical weathering. Carbon dioxide dissolves in the water to form carbonic acid, which aggressively eats away at the calcium carbonate in the limestone. This process, known as solution weathering, was happening not on the surface of the cave, but deep inside the cracks. The stone begins to rot from within, its structural integrity silently compromised. These interconnected processes, the removal of hydrostatic support, the introduction of buoyant lift, and the accelerated internal erosion, formed the genesis of a radical new idea. It was a theory that explained how the actions of divers themselves, over many years, could inadvertently weaponize their own breath against the cave. This was the bubble-induced collapse theory. The theory explained the most terrifying aspect of the incident: why the collapse happened without warning. The weakening process was entirely internal and invisible. From the outside, the ceiling looked as solid and stable as it had for centuries. But inside, it was being hollowed out, weakened, and primed for failure. It was a geological time bomb, waiting for one final tiny push. Perhaps the pressure wave from a passing diver, or even the addition of just one more bubble to trigger a catastrophic, instantaneous failure. The rock didn't just fall, it shattered. The equilibrium was broken, and the cave reclaimed its passage in a violent, sudden convulsion. The news that the rescue attempt had failed sent a wave of devastation through the global cave diving community. Parker Turner was not just another diver. He was an icon. If this could happen to Parker, then no one was safe. The impossibility of recovering Parker's body added another layer of pain. Indian Springs, the site of so many explorations, had become his final resting place. The shock and grief quickly galvanized into a movement for change. The bubble-induced collapse theory was a watershed moment. The most immediate change was a new and intense focus on bubble management. Divers were now taught to be acutely aware of where their bubbles were going. This new awareness of ceiling stability became a critical part of dive planning. Parker Turner's death, as tragic as it was, became a catalyst for one of the most significant safety advancements in the history of technical diving. Indian Springs remains restricted, its reputation as one of the most dangerous caves in the world cemented by the 1991 tragedy. The story of Parker Turner is a descent into a place of profound darkness, where the laws of physics run their course. The abyss is impartial. It does not recognize skill, courage, or experience. In a place where light never reaches, even the smallest mistake, or the smallest bubble, can be fatal.